Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited about today. I have another guest. I only bring in one guest a month. And today's, of course, all of our guests are so special. But Sheri Traxler, I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. And Sheri, we met because we were in a speaking group, HPS, which is the Heroic Public Speaking. And I found out a little bit of Sheri's background, and I thought it was so interesting, and I'm going to have you share a little bit of that because you are a certified intuitive eating counselor. I have never met a certified intuitive eating counselor, and I thought that would be just super interesting for my audience. So can you explain a little bit of your background, Sheri, because you went on your first diet at age 9. Okay, so that's awfully young. And to think about eating disorders and all of this, but you work a lot with mindset. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. So I started out on the downside of diets and all of that mess when I was 9, not because there was any medical issues or anything. It was just, that's what the women in my family did. So, okay, that's what we're going to do. The good part that was happening at that time was I also was into fitness. My family exercised and we went on walks and things like that. So that was good. But it was just, okay, I'm going to start dieting, and ended up that became my journey for my life in the sense of career. I knew from an early age around that same time that I wanted to help people live well and be healthy. And so there had the positive, happy side, but there was also the negative side of it. And the intuitive eating piece came because, Deborah, when I was in my mid-20s, so by this point, it had been 15 or more years of dieting, and it was not working. So I was, the yo-yo dieting thing, it was a mess. And there was one time I remember I was in college and I don't think when we chatted earlier, just getting to know each other, I don't think I shared this story with you, that I was running cross country in college. So we were doing 2-a-day runs. And in my journal, looking back, I had written this in my journal that I'm so horrible. I just blew my diet. I'm so bad. I went into the break room at work and I was eating all these donuts. It's like, what's wrong with me? But looking back now, looking at it, I didn't realize at the time, well, I had done quote unquote really good on my diet for several days, which meant I was going hungry and running 2-a-day runs with cross country. Well, of course I go into a break room and all these donuts, I'm going to overeat them. So I realized through all of that, this does not work. Mentally, it doesn't work. Socially, it doesn't work. It's wearing me out. I'm tired because my mind is consumed with these things. Physically, I'm tired because of that. And I didn't know another way. So I just started trying to research something other than diets. And by the time, it took me about 10 years to get out of that mentality and into a healthy relationship with food. And then I came across this thing called intuitive eating. And I went, oh my, that's what I've been teaching myself how to do. And these 2 dietitians had come up with this program. I got certified in it. And so now I've been helping people with not only their fitness and their health habits around that, but also coming out of diets.
How interesting. We all, as women, not all, I shouldn't say all, because some of you who are listening to this or watching, you're going, well, I never had that problem. But a lot of us have had that, you kind of starve the body and all you want are carbs. That's just what you crave, something to help you fill up. And, I love carbs. So you just have to, you end up craving them. But if you eat, like when you're saying intuitive eating, we'll get into that a little bit more about actually what that means. But it's having a son who had ended up being a personal trainer and still is in incredible shape. He's very systematic on his eating, and he has a lot of
Yes.
energy. He's an attorney developing property, a lot of energy. So, but there's a lot to this, and so I just didn't know anything about like there's an actual certification for this. That's very interesting, and I love that. Your message is of authentic energy and not inauthentic energy. There's so many messages today about authenticity. And
Yes.
so let us know a little bit, pulled back the curtain on that one.
Oh, this is fun. And this came up because I have friends who they're into, a high energy lifestyle. One of the things I help professionals with is creating a high energy lifestyle. And the first thing most people's minds go to is, okay, so I'm going to live on Red Bull or I'm going to live on lattes. I'm going to, pump in the caffeine or I'm going to do a lot of sugar or I'm going to, a lot of people are into fasting and, oh, it gives me so much energy to fast. So they try all these external things that drive their system. And when you have authentic energy, you are supporting your own body systems in a way that you have a natural, full energy flow, but you aren't having to kick something external to drive it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does. And professional athletes need to hear this message about, not just professional athletes, but those that are playing on some of these teams. I've watched one of our sons who is now a professional athlete. But boy, when they were doing all these games, they were all downing the Red Bull and they were all downing those, energy 5 hour, whatever those are. I've
Yeah.
never had one. If I had one, I'd probably be awake for days. Yes,
Yes.
I have a lot of energy. I don't need any of that. But I think it's such a shortcut. And what you are doing here is taking away just that shortcut and making it a lifestyle. And I love that because it is authentic. It's what you want to be able to do. And we've entitled this, that was your little title of that, authentic high energy without lattes. Well, of course, I love my lattes. I love my cappuccinos, but I don't do them. I don't have them just for energy. I have them because
Right.
they just taste good. So it's my little, but I put the right stuff in them. So this was partly this personal story of yours, correct? That it came out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you had shared. So that was wonderful. Well, how do you know? I'm going to just ask some of these questions and we'll see where these lead. But how do you know if you have enough energy? I mean, our bodies tell us, but should we have more? Should we want more?
The general rule of thumb is if you have between 15 and 16 hours a day that you are alert, able to make good decisions, have clarity, that you have that sense of vitality, you're good. If you have periods during the day that you either feel really speeded up inside or that you feel that you're really dragging, we need to look at it. Now, when I say 15 to 16 hours, that does not mean at 8 o'clock at night, you're going to have the exact same level of energy that you do at 8 o'clock in the morning. You do spend your energy during the day and it's going to be a little lower in the evening. But if you are at 2 in the afternoon, mentally exhausted until say 6, you've got a 4-hour window that you're exhausted, or you've got energy for 12 hours during the day. And then at 6 at night, you're like, I'm done. I don't have any energy left to play with my kids. I don't have any energy left to pursue a hobby. We need to look at that. On the other hand, somebody who says, well, I'm there, but I want to be able to stay up until midnight with all kinds of energy, sleep for 4 hours and get up at 4 a.m. and hit it. That's not necessarily realistic. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, because we think, oh, I can't get enough done. We need to do just, cut off the sleep. We need to, be up for more hours.
Oh, yes. We'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Great. And I find when it was triggering a couple of thoughts from me because
Yeah.
I tend to have a lot of energy. But if I, like today, it was an example. We grow a number of things on our property because I love being outside. So we have these Concord grapes we are growing right now, and they are very sweet. So I had that as a snack this morning. There is so much sugar in in Concord grapes. It
Yes.
was like not a good snack for me because I could feel my body, and I try to, I usually do little snacks in between. I don't know what your program's going to entail, but
Hmm.
every 2.5, 3 hours, just put something of, some sort of protein or a little bit of something, to kind of keep going through the day. But if I have too much sugar of that pure sugar, there's a drop. I mean, chocolate does the same thing, but the grapes really do it too, which is
Uh-huh.
kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
interesting. But I'm sure there's something to that with that nutritional timing and all of that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the pieces of my personal story related to energy is the dieting certainly was a piece of the drain for the energy, but just my whole lifestyle. I've gone through adrenal fatigue twice. I went through major insomnia when I went through perimenopause. So there have been things for me that have been a huge energy drain at times, and I've had to learn all of these things that I share with my clients and workshops on what you need to do to increase that energy. And you're mentioning the grapes is one piece of that. There's a concept I created called the powerful plate. And if you want to draw this on a sheet of paper, Deborah, I encourage you to do this. Everybody listening, unless you're driving. If you're driving and listening, do not grab a sheet of paper. You can do this later when you get to your office.
Please.
Is Yeah, take a sheet of paper and just draw a circle on it. And then in that circle, draw a line top to bottom, halfway down, or I'll shoot from top to bottom in the middle. And then one of those halves, quarter it, and then draw a little sliver. If you picture that, half of what you eat each time that you eat should be vegetable, a quarter should be protein, and just about a quarter would be some type of carbohydrate like your grapes, and then a little sliver of fat. So, and that's for lunches, dinners, and snacks. So whenever you're going for, okay, and it's every 2.5, 3 hours, my stomach is saying, I need food. My body is saying, I need food. You grab a few grapes, but a handful of grapes is just going to be the carb portion. So you would want to decrease the number of grapes that you're having and throw in a couple of nuts for some fat, a little bit of protein, and maybe a couple of celery sticks for some vegetable. So you've got that powerful plate balance that's going to keep your blood sugar steady.
What great advice. If we all just take time to a little bit of planning and have the preparation with the food. And this brings up a point. We were away for a couple days and celebrating. My husband's brother was celebrating a birthday. So after dinner, a little bit later, they had some ice cream cake. So I had a little tiny bit. My husband had a piece, and he said, I just didn't sleep well. And I said, you ate all those carbs and that sugar right before bed. He says, but carbs, that used to help me sleep. I said, I don't think anymore.
Our bodies do change.
Yes. So anyway, I just kind of left it at that. There's so much you can say to a spouse. But that sort of message for being able, and if you plan it out right, I should have had a couple nuts. That would have really done it for me, Sheri, if I had just had a little bit of the protein with it. But what happens is that you end up eating just that because I'm also working. I'm always multitasking on something. And so I'm just downing those grapes. And they're so good. They're so sweet. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
you mentioned something of, the preparation.
Right.
Always, and this really gets into, the in-depth on the food part of it. But for the prep, just something really simple for you is something that makes things so easy is you go into the grocery and they already have the vegetable trays prepped. If you don't want to do that, you can prep your own on the weekend or something. And then if you have a bowl of nuts, So if you're having to go into your pantry and pull out the nuts and going to the fridge and pull out the celery and you're putting it together at that time, that is too much hassle. It is not going to get done. You're just going to go for the handful of grapes.
Right.
But if everything is already divvied up for the week of, here's my snack tray that has all these things, then you just grab and go.
Great. That is a great piece of advice, and it's good for meals too. Planning ahead on your meals.
Absolutely.
That yeah, your full meals. So I think, but especially snacks, because I find the snacks are the downfall for many. Because you'll just grab something. You think, I'm kind of hungry, or I'm a little low on energy, so I'm just going to grab something. So I think those are more of a downfall for many, because they're not prepared. So, and I like your idea of having, the tray just kind of ready to go. So that's good. So what are some of those common mistakes that you see? That's probably one of them, is the snacking, or what other things are you noticing that...
I would say it's a great question. I would say the biggest mistakes I see are around what we just talked about, that we're eating out of balance.
Okay.
Another common mistake we've hit on a moment ago is sleep, is that we think, okay, I've got this. Actually, there's two things that tend to cause this, Deborah. One is I've got this project that I really want to get finished, and so I'm staying up until midnight to do it. Or one of my clients, his was a decompressing issue, that he was like, at the end of the day, I just need to chill. So he would get on social media, watching videos or doing something else, and getting sucked in. Next thing you know, instead of it's going to bed at 10:30, he's scrolling and it's 1 a.m. still when he's getting to bed. And as a business owner, he then would be tired the next day, not as productive, and that noticing that, oh, this is really affecting my ability to make money because I'm staying up sleeping.
Right.
Now, this is just a little tip, is anytime that you can tie an activity to some other part of your life, it'll really help you motivate. So one of the things he did was he recognized, okay, if I'm X productive, I make this much money. But if I'm Y productive, I make this much. So long story short, as he would be scrolling through, he would realize, oh, that just cost me $1,000 tomorrow. Oh, that extra hour just cost me whatever. So very quickly, he was able to close the phone and start getting to sleep at a normal time. Another one, this one's a really, really common thing, and it's so easy to fix. And we sit too much. Whenever, and you notice this yourself, if you're sitting and working on something, after a couple of hours, your energy begins to dip. Versus if you're standing working on it, you're staying more engaged. Hemingway always wrote standing at a dresser. His typewriter was on a dresser, and he would stand and do his typing. So just any time that you can move or stand is going to help. And I'd say the biggest lesson on the common mistakes is we hear, how do I put this, Deborah? We've often heard, you're not a machine. Right. So, you're a human being. You're not a machine. I want to flip that and say, actually, we are kind of like a machine. Your computer, if you don't reboot it, if you don't keep it straightened up and cleaned up internally, it's going to slow down. And we do the same thing. If we don't take time to reboot by sleeping at night, if we don't take time to reboot by having a mindful meal and letting our mind rest, we're going to slow down. We might be alert in the sense of we're not asleep and we're trying to get something done, but we're slower than we would be if we had rebooted.
What a great point. And for any of you techies, or even people that are non-techies out there, know how valuable it is sometimes when things aren't working to all of a sudden, just turn it off and turn it back on again. I just did that this weekend, fixing a Bluetooth thing, and we just had a stationary bike fixed. And sometimes when I'm riding that little stationary bike, I'm thinking, wow, why isn't it loading? Why isn't it? all I need to do is just turn it off and turn it on, and then it's fine. Because what happens is on a computer too is you get so much in your, like your cache files, everything's built up.
Yes.
And that's kind of what our bodies, I'm going to equate this with computer language, and then you can interpret for us, Sheri. But it's going to build up to be on almost overload, to nothing else will load. So our minds are tired, our bodies are tired, and we can't seem to function. It's not cleaned up. It's, got to clear those files. And every other message I get now are some sort of new software program. They want to clean up my files. It's like, no, I can clean up my files. I don't need another program. But you need to clear the cache. You need to clear some of that to be able to make that room. And I really like that sort of illustration of just restarting the computer. So your
body and your brain need that multiple times a day and a big win at night.
Yes. And so funny, I bought a standing desk because I've done so much video work some years ago, but I don't use it often enough. I start to get tired and I think, oh, why am I so tired or fatigued? I just know when to take a break. I let my body tell me, but it still is. We do a lot of sitting. All of us do, pretty much, unless you are just, totally on the run for, but if you're in almost anything now, remote work, everything, a lot of people are on their phones all day, and where are they?
Yes.
I love the example of Hemingway. That's a very good one. So those are some good habits, actually. I don't know if you have any more to add to that, but those are some
Oh, goodness, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We could talk about this for a long time. I would say that, so those are things that are core central principles that are pretty common. One of the things I like to do with my clients is give some quick wins of, okay, here are some simple things you can do that have a big impact. And if you're okay, I'd love to share some of those.
That would be great. And to just remind everyone who's listening to this, I always write an article to go along with every podcast. And so you will get links to all of Sheri's material, and I'll put in a couple of her tips in here too. So you will get some of these, but I love that you give people actionable tips. That's great.
Yeah. So one we have talked about, and that is powerful plate. And I do have on my YouTube channel, I have a whole video going in depth on this. So if you want, I can send you the link for that. Yeah. But it's just remembering every time that you eat that you want to not just have, people talk about, oh, carbs are horrible. No, they're not. You need them. Yeah. And you need protein, and you need fat, and you need vegetable for not only the nutrients, but from a fiber standpoint to slow the digestion. So making sure every time that you eat, you've got a powerful plate. That's a huge one. Sleep hygiene. This has a big impact. And you have probably heard this tip before. An hour minimum. For some people, it's really more like an hour and a half, 2 hours before you go to bed. Electronics go off. And even if you don't have trouble getting to sleep, and with hormone changes, a lot of us have trouble getting to sleep. Even if you don't have trouble with that, your quality of sleep is going to decrease if you have had all of that blue light right before sleep. So computers, social media, TV, whatever you can turn off, turn off. This next one, oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this next one because it is a stress management quick hit that it's amazing. And for the past 2 weeks, I've personally been very diligent on this and have noticed a massive change in my energy level. And that's what I call white space meditation. It's not really meditation. So, if you're not into meditation, or if you are into it, don't be offended that this is not really meditation. So what I call white space meditation is, Deborah, have you ever, you've been working on a project and you're going to the kitchen to get a glass of water. And while you're going to the kitchen to get a glass of water, your mind is either thinking about the project that you've been working on, or that project took longer than you expected. And so now you've got to figure out how to get the next project done faster. And so your brain is working while you're walking to go get your glass of water. That is white space in your life where your brain should actually do a tiny reboot. it should get a little bit of rest. So something that a therapist that I worked with when I was dealing with hormonal anxiety for a while, one of her examples was every time I'm going out to get a new client to bring them back to my office, I'm not thinking about that client. I'm not thinking about the client I just finished. I'm paying attention to my footfalls.
Great idea.
Now, for me, when I'm going to get that glass of water, I'm paying attention to my breath. And when the thought comes up, oh, I need to be figuring out this problem. In 60 seconds, when I'm back at my desk, I will focus on that problem. But for this 60 seconds, I'm rebooting. And if you're at a red light, paying attention to your breath, anytime that you can focus in just for a moment to give your brain a rest during the day, during those white space transition times, it is going to make a major difference in your energy. And I have personally noticed this past 2 weeks when I've really been focused on it, that it's made a difference. What are your thoughts on that before I go into some others? Because I saw you shaking your head a lot.
Yes. I call it just taking those minute breaks. And
yes,
what's hard for multitaskers is not to think about anything. You need to focus. When you said to focus on the breath, I know that works, because I've been a vocal instructor as well, and the music and all of that. But that breath is usually the first thing that goes for a singer, and that's why you hear those vibratos that I say you can drive the truck through. So, but you have to. It's true, but it's just that support, and if we can kind of it's that habit, and if you can get in the habit of, okay, so let me just breathe here for a moment, kind of clear the mind a little bit, and what it does is again, and that I love that illustration of that rebooting, that'll help you reboot. And this is something specifically, it's not in the food area, it's in the body area, but they're all connected. And especially the breath. The breath is huge.
Yes.
And I really do like that. I take little breaks. Of course, I love to be outside. So, just walking, and then I'm going to pick fruit. I'm going to do something totally different. And it's just a total different diversion. And that's when you get away from it and do it, all of a sudden what happens is your mind, it clears up. And all of a sudden you go, oh, now I get it. I get it. You get back and you're fresh and you go, I got it now. And so many times that has happened.
Yes. And you're mentioning going outside. That is actually my other tiny little thing that has a huge ROI on energy for my clients is ideally set a timer. Like if you do a Pomodoro technique that, okay, I'm going to work for 50 minutes and take a 10-minute break, or however you do your trigger to do this, is in those breaks, do not get on social media. I love social media. I get on social media, but that is not a break. That is still input coming in. The break is go outside and move, because sunshine is a massive energy boost, and it does a couple of things. Increases your dopamine, increases your serotonin, which is your feel-good hormone. And that serotonin, this is the beautiful loop, Deborah. That serotonin, that when you go outside and get in the sunshine and you get the serotonin boost, that serotonin then turns into melatonin at sunset. And that melatonin is then going to help you sleep. So it is this beautiful cycle of how we are designed to go outside, get some sunshine, get some movement. The movement itself releases endorphins, releases your feel-good hormones, and therefore is going to increase your energy.
I love the analytics about this. It's just, okay, just show me the facts, show me the data, show me all of that. And I've studied this because I've studied mindsets and, some of this our brain, how our brain works. And I really, really like your illustration of, that connection about, the serotonin going into the melatonin. Do we need, what sleep aids do we need? Well, let's just get outside just for a little bit. I'm really sorry for those who have, if you're in Sweden right now, you don't have any sunlight. But I know, I don't, this time of year, I don't know what their ratio is, but because there's so much depression, and I did a study on that, with the depression and the rates of those when you do not have that. And God has given, I am such a believer in this, that God has given us what we need.
Yes.
Outside, and the food and all of that, and the brains and the ability to reason and all of that. And sometimes we wish people would have a little more common sense, but that's that's where we are.
That's for them, but your listeners have the common sense. So.
Yes, because you are listening to the Women at Halftime podcast. Yes, definitely. But yeah, getting outside, just taking that little break. And so many people are struggling with just mentally, depression, especially coming out of the years that we had. And I know people that were even afraid to get outside. They did not leave their house. And I was not one of those people. I just thought, and I've met more of my neighbors, and I still keep up that, some of those walks and getting the dog, everything.
We did too. Yes.
It's just a wonderful time. Love being outside. Love it. And taking my bike out and all of that. So I think, that is a gift that we've been given, especially at different times of the year. Depends on where you live. But it's a great gift for that. So I love how that was connected. Would you have another one or two of those little quick little fixes? Or
the ones that are not so much for calming us, but more for lifting our energy. The other one I would say would be this one. Okay. This one actually is not like a quick hit, but it still has a massive ROI. So I'm going to tell you a story on this one. This one is about enjoying your work. And when I worked at Vanderbilt Medical Center for 12 years, and during that time was when I went through one of my adrenal fatigue periods. And my boss was a godsend in something that he did. He said, Sheri, because here's the thing, I was doing all of the good energy stuff. I was sleeping well. I was exercising every morning in the sunlight, because that's a side note. Exercise in the sunlight anytime is good, but especially in the morning to help your sleep at night. I was doing all those things, but I was still zapped from energy. And he said, let's look at what you're doing. So he had me write down, literally, Deborah, everything I did, from anything I did during the week that took, maybe more than 10 minutes. Write it down and then score it a -3, just drains the life out of you. 0 is neutral, to +3, which is you could do this all day long, have tons of energy, and we wouldn't even have to pay you for it. Most of my stuff was a -1, -2.
Wow.
So, okay, no wonder I was exhausted. Well, here's what happened that was so cool, was we took the things that I wanted to do more of, that other people were doing that they hated.
Wow.
Switched some things around, because we all have different personalities, offloaded off of me things that were, the -2s, the -3s, onto people that it was a +2, a +3 for them. Suddenly now it's not just me that's benefiting, it's other people in the organization that are benefiting. And energy, of course, increased for me. I'm sure it increased for them as well. So my encouragement there is with my clients, from a quick hit standpoint is, look at the things you do on a regular basis. What are 1 or 2 things that you just really get exhausted with that you could trade off? From a personal standpoint, I'll tell you this story real quick. Personally, my husband and I, when we bought the house that we're in, I'd been in a condo prior to that, so I didn't have to mow the grass. Well, I was going to be a good wife, and I was going to mow half of the grass so that he didn't have to mow all of it. He was going to be a good husband and do his part of the ironing, because, I'm not going to have Sheri do all the ironing. We never talked about this. Silly us. We never talked about this. We just were trying to be good for each other. Well, turns out mowing the grass wore me out emotionally. I hated it. But ironing, I could just get in a zone, put on some music, whatever. I loved it. He was the opposite of that. Well, eventually we had a discussion. And so then we switched where he mows everything and I do all the ironing, and we're both happy.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I've never heard that sort of program where you would like rate everything like the minus threes and the zeros. And I usually just pace myself. But I think because of that organization, especially if you work in an organization, it's almost like, knowing their personality types and what jobs to give people with the enneagrams and all of the, the personality types. Mm-hmm. But this, to be able to even know what your own energy levels are, that's a great tip and really interesting.
Yeah. My boss was a genius on that.
Yeah, that's great. It really helps you to help others, which is wonderful too, because that is the purpose. So, well, is there something that I want to give everybody some information of how to contact you, but if there's one or two things that you'd ever want people just to leave with after this, just to say, I listened to this amazing interview today with Sheri Traxler, and she gave me these two tips, and this is the one I'm going to follow up on, because you've given us so much today. And of course, you'll have the article to follow up, and we will have the links to your YouTube video, all of that in the article. But if people are listening, what could they do right now? That's a big question, isn't it? Just going, how do I pick?
So I'm going to give you two, mm-hmm. and these are in addition to what we've already talked about. Okay. So actually, no, I'm going to give you three. I'm going to give you three. What they can do right now.
Right.
One is knowing that your energy and your rebooting is partly to give you that sense of calm and creativity so that then you have the energy. This you can do right now. Look around your space, whether you're in your car, at your home, or at your office. Look around your space and see an area that you can clear out in just 5 or 10 minutes to give you some white space, not white space in your life like I was talking about before, but white space in your physical presence, because chaos drains us.
Right.
So for some people, it is the rest of my office is going to be a disaster, and that is okay, but I'm always going to keep a clean desk. Or my back seat is going to be a disaster, but my passenger seat is always going to be clear. Find an area that in 5 or 10 minutes, you can bring a little bit of order, and that will help you calm, which will also then give you energy. So that's one. Another one, and this one you may not be able to do right now if you don't have it available. A friend of mine is a clinical aromatherapist. Well, she does all the medical aromatherapy. And I asked her when I was getting into this, energy work from the sense of having more physical energy, it's like, what are the key essential oils for boosting energy and calm and creativity? And so from a molecular standpoint, these are her top 5, and I'll give them to you because they've been great. Orange, grapefruit, white fir, peppermint, and rosemary. So we can put those in the list if you want, but those 5, if you're feeling an energy dip or needing some creativity, go to one of those 5. And then the third is, we have downloaded a lot today for you. You've heard a lot of ideas. There was something when you heard it that inside of you resonated and went, oh, that's the one I can try now. Oh, so I'm not going to prescribe and say, do this one or this one. You know your own life. You know which one is going to be easiest for you to implement, which one's going to have the most impact for you. And my challenge to you is pick one, and over the next 7 days, implement that. Don't try to implement all of them. Implement that one, and then you can always build from there.
And I like that, just to do one, but you have to do it. You have to take that first step. And that's great advice, because people know what to do, and then they put it aside and go, I'll do that tomorrow. And then tomorrow they say, I'll do it next week. Or not, I've known people a year later, I never got to that. So it's very important just to go ahead, take action, write that little note to yourself and say, okay, when I get back or after I finish listening to this, I'm gonna do this. I love that advice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it perfectly. Something is always better than nothing.
Right. Done is better than perfect. I preach that
Yes.
quite often. Quite often.
Yes.
Well, everyone can reach you with your website. Give that just real quick. The best way to reach you, if they're just listening to this, if you click into the article, you'll have more links. But how can they reach you if they're just listening?
Okay. Sheri, Sheri, at thevireolife.com, which is my website. TheVireo life, life.com.
Good. TheVireolife.com. And your website actually has a lot of information on it as well. And you have a blog and all of that. So that's a lot of programs going. So it's...
Yeah. And then in my YouTube channel, one of my playlists is energy. And I go into more in depth on a lot of these things.
Perfect. I will put that, hopefully I'll put as many links as I can into the article for you, not to overwhelm you. So, Sheri, this has been wonderful. And I want to thank all of our listeners, of course, for listening and sharing these. They are such fun for me. And of course, at our womenathalftime.com, you can hear all the other episodes and find the links to articles and the programs we have going. I help you get off a roundabout that you are stuck on, and part of that is listening to some of these episodes and applying some of these great words of advice I hear from some of my guests, and that's a great way to do it. And then so you can climb your own summit. And if you've not read The Summit, the Journey to Hero Mountain, make sure you click on that was my 5th book, and it's an allegory, which is so much fun to write. Hard, but so much fun. Anyway, well, thank you again, Sheri, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening. So, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.